Evolution can make things better. It can also make things worse. But what happened to Clash Royale is something else entirely. Since 2016, the game has changed so much that the version we play today barely resembles the one from the so-called golden era. This video will surprise you with just how many things used to be different. Skeletons. Back then, skeletons spawned in groups of 4. It was totally a game changer. You could kite air units effortlessly and shut down ground pushes way more efficiently. Their value was so absurd that by 2017, they had become the most used card at the very top of the ladder. Skeletons have undergone several balance changes. First, they were spawned in 4, then reduced to 3 in 2017, then back to spawning 4 again, and then reduced to 3 again in that same year. Freeze. Freeze was easily one of the most broken spells in the game. It covered a massive 4-tile radius and could lock down troops for up to 8 seconds at max level. Even at level 1, you were still freezing everything for a full 5 seconds. However, it dealt 0 damage, so you couldn't clear skeletons or finish off a tower stuck at 1 HP, but even with that limitation, Freeze was still insanely overpowered. Especially now that it has a medium radius and can stun enemies for 4 seconds, which totally makes the card effective when dealing damage. Its mechanics changed over time, but one thing remained the same: its value and effectiveness. Bomber. Bomber once cost 3 elixir with 50% more HP, 50% more damage, and an extra half tile of range. That made him a defensive powerhouse, especially against heavy pushes. In 2021, Supercell cut his cost down to 2 elixir, explaining it was to add a cheaper answer to wall breakers and bait decks, and to give solid support for mid-cost win conditions like Giant and Hog Rider. Princess. When she first arrived in early 2016, Princess was on another level. She had a 9.5 tile range, the longest in the entire game, and a larger splash radius that let her wipe out swarms effortlessly. Supercell moved quickly to rein her in. Her range was reduced to 9 tiles after a range bug fix, and her splash radius was toned down as well. These changes removed her unfair reach, but they didn't erase her identity. She still costs 3 elixir and keeps her 9-tile range, but her stats scale naturally with higher level caps rather than direct buffs. Cannon. During the game's earlier years, Cannon was completely different, and if you guys have watched the channel for a while, I'm sure you're tired of hearing this, but it had a huge 7-tile range, massive HP, and a 60-second lifetime, letting it tank pushes with ease. It could even survive a charging prince. Supercell quickly realized it was too strong. Over time, its cost dropped to 3 elixir from a whopping 6, its range was cut to 5.5 tiles, HP was heavily reduced, and its lifetime was shortened to 30 seconds. Today, Cannon is an efficient defensive building, but nothing like the tanky monster it was at launch. Poison. Poison has always been a control spell, but in 2016 it was outright oppressive. Not only did it deal damage, but it also slowed troops and towers by 25%. That made it the most broken spell in the game, with giant poison decks dominating the meta for months. Over time, Supercell toned it down. That heavy slow was removed, the duration was reduced, and its tower damage was gradually nerfed. By 2016, Poison is far more refined with 8 seconds of steady damage, a much lighter slow, and a clear focus on value instead of chip. It no longer wins games by itself, but through smart placement and pressure. It remains one of the most reliable control spells in the game. Goblin Barrel. Back then, Goblin Barrel cost 4 elixir, and fun fact, it actually dealt damage on impact, though most of you might not remember it. When it landed, it could hit both troops and towers at the same time, and as the year went on, Supercell made several changes to balance it. The elixir cost was dropped to 3, that impact damage was removed, and the goblin's damage was reduced. Royal Giant. He had a 2-second deploy time, 7.5 tile range, and faster attack speed, making him one of the most frustrating win conditions at the time. He even chipped away towers safely while counters were limited at the time, but throughout the years his range was reduced, and today it's sitting at 5 tiles. His damage scales with higher levels, and the evolution mechanic adds some strategic pressure. Skeleton Army. Skarmy spawned an incredible 21 skeletons. Yep, 21. But it came at a price of 4 elixir. But the sheer value of having over 20 tiny troops often made it worth it. It could devastate pushes, but it was easily countered by zapper arrows. Oftentimes, it did give little value. They quickly balanced it by lowering Elixir to 3 and reducing skeleton count to 15, so the Skarmy became more reliable. Elixir Collector. In 2016, Elixir Collector was arguably the most broken building in the game. It cost just 5 Elixir, had more HP, a faster production rate, and a longer lifespan. You could drop a pump early and barely get punished, snowballing huge Elixir leads. Beatdown and 3 Musketeer decks abused it, and if left untouched, the game was often over. Years later, and the pump is far more controlled. It now costs 6 Elixir, produces Elixir more slowly, and trades burst value for longevity. It still rewards protection and planning, but no longer decides games on its own. Rage. Rage used to cost 3 Elixir and didn't deal any damage at all, but it was still insane. Once a troop entered the Rage radius, it stayed raged even after leaving the area. This made pushes extremely hard to stop, and once you drop it on a tank and other support unit, the pressure becomes more overwhelming. Later, Rage was reworked to 2 Elixir and given area damage, turning it into a much more flexible spell. Instead of being a niche all-in tool, it became viable across multiple deck archetypes, rewarding time and synergy rather than raw chaos. P.E.K.K.A. In 2016, she was one of the deadliest cards in the game. She cost 8 Elixir, had a 3-second deploy time, and nearly golem-level hit points. But the high cost and slow deployment made her risky to use. Throughout the years, they gradually reworked P.E.K.K.A., lowering her cost, speeding up her deployment, and tuning her stats to keep her lethal without making her overwhelming. Barbarians. Back in 2016, Barbarians used to spawn in a group of 4, but they had enough HP to survive a fireball, and that alone was really a game changer. They were durable, high-damage melee units that could stop single-target threats. Over the years, Supercell adjusted their hit points, attack speed, and deploy time to keep them consistent without making them overpowered. 3 Musketeers. This card has been through a roller coaster ride, I'd say. When they were first introduced, they cost 10 Elixir, then dropped to 9, went back to 10, and eventually settled at 9 yet again. At 10 Elixir, playing them was incredibly risky. You had nothing left to defend, and one mistake could cost you the game. In 2016, they were simply 3 normal Musketeers with massive damage but extreme spell vulnerability. Goblins. From 2016 to 2022, Goblins only spawned 3 units, which made them weak on paper and often overshadowed by skeletons, but stat-wise, they were actually more dangerous back then. Their first attack was faster and their deployment time was quicker, letting them melt targets almost instantly if ignored. These small timing advantages made Goblins far more threatening than most players remember. Arrows. In 2016, arrows were actually pretty underwhelming. Its projectile speed was a lot slower, so it took longer to hit its target. It only fired 1 volley, but with higher damage. Not to mention, its tower damage was much higher, so it doubled as a cheap way to chip towers while clearing swarms. Over the years, Arrow's projectile speed was increased, its tower damage was cut, and the spell was reworked to fire 3 volleys instead of 1. The radius was also reduced, so it forced more precise placement. Zap. Zap, on the other hand, was extremely overpowered. It dealt more damage and stunned troops for a full second. That's why it was one of the most reliable spells in the game. It could reset Inferno Towers, Sparky, Elixir Collectors, and its high tower damage made it a staple in almost every deck. Later, Zap's tower damage was reduced, stun duration settled at half a second, and its damage was balanced for modern gameplay. Golem. Back then, the Golem looked completely different. Spiked collars on its neck, a different body style, and its explosion looked like a mini sunburst. Even the Golemites had the same impressive effect. Its massive HP and death damage made it a nightmare to stop. The visual for this card is probably one of the most impressive in the game. Musketeer. Musketeer cost 5 Elixir until February of 2016, but she dealt about 25% more damage. Her attack speed was slightly slower, which balanced out her higher damage output. She had a 6-tile range that could hit both air and ground, and was perfect for taking out minions, wizards, or supporting pushes. However, she was vulnerable to splash and spells. Fireball. Back in 2016, Fireball dealt high area damage, could hit both air and ground troops, its crown tower damage was higher, and its knockback could reset charging troops, making it perfect for controlling pushes. Fireball was all about positive elixir trades, hitting multiple high-value troops at once and getting huge value. Did I mention that it was visually striking too? Yeah, back in the day, it looked like a blazing sun falling from the sky, adding a lot of flair every time it hit. X-Bow. Think X-Bow's annoying now? Well, wait till you hear about what it was like in 2016. It had a crazy 13-tile range, so you could place it next to your princess tower and it would still target the opponent's tower. And yes, it could even hit air troops. But there was a catch. It came with a 5-second long deploy time. So timing was everything. Its hit points and attack were tuned respectively, and it was a real statement on the battlefield. Fire spirits. Yes, fire spirits, plural. They came in a group of 3 for just 2 elixir back in the day. The value was insane. They shredded minion horde, chipped away at barbarians, and made for a surprisingly strong offensive play at the bridge. Even though each spirit had low HP, 2 out of the 3 usually connected to the tower if left unchecked, and their biggest strength, goblin barrel counters. No matter where you dropped them, those pesky goblins didn't stand a chance. Today, fire spirits look and play differently, and now it's 1 elixir for a single tankier spirit with higher HP, bigger splash, and some stronger damage. Miner. Miner was a total menace. You could deploy him anywhere, and he'd tunnel underground to surprise your opponent's troops or chip away at a tower. He had solid HP and did 40% of his damage to crown towers, making him a serious chip threat. Modern Miner is balanced and now only deals 25% damage to towers. Log. Back then, the log was actually stronger in terms of knockback, pushing troops much further than it does today. The downside, it rolled for a longer time, which made offensive timing pretty awkward. If you mistimed it, the log would just keep rolling while the fight had already moved on. Still, once players figured it out, it became a staple. Mega Minion. Back in 2016, players literally called him the Meta Minion, and for good reason. He cost 3 elixir, but he was fast. He had an attack speed of 1.3 seconds compared to today's 1.5. He shredded support troops, cleaned up pushes, and even worked on offense. And the best part is probably that Fireball couldn't counter him. No wonder he was in almost every deck. That alone gave him insane value. And as the years went on, Supercell slowly toned him down. His attack speed was reduced and his damage was adjusted. Today, Mega Minion is still solid, but no longer overwhelming. Elite Barbarians. When Elite Barbarians were first introduced at the end of 2016, they weren't scary at all. In fact, most players thought they were pretty useless. Their HP was low, their attack speed felt slow, and they cost a whopping 6 elixir. Just not worth it. They just didn't deliver. But they did have one thing going for them. They were incredibly fast. Back then, they were about 33% faster than they are today, and once Supercell started buffing their HP and damage, well, everything changed. By January of 2017, they completely broke the game. Dropping Elite Barbarians at the bridge became a nightmare, and they quickly turned into one of the most hated cards in Clash Royale. Over the years, Supercell pulled them back. Their speed was reduced, their attack timing was slowed, and their stats were tuned to be more fair. Tornado. Tornado used to deal damage slowly. Can you imagine? It lasted for 3 seconds and took 3 ticks just to kill skeletons. Today, it's sharp and instant. Duration is down to 1 second, but the pull is a lot stronger, yanking troops into place immediately. Goblin Gang. Goblin Gang wasn't around in 2016, but when it launched in 2017, it instantly became a meta card. For just 3 elixir, it gave some insane value as a swarm, defender, and spellbait tool. At first, it only spawned 5 goblins, 3 regular goblins, 2 spear goblins. That missing 6th goblin actually really mattered. The card felt weaker and less reliable, especially on defense. Over time, Supercell tweaked attack speeds, spawn timing, and eventually brought the count back to 6 goblins. Executioner. When he first dropped in early 2017, he broke the game instantly. There was a time when he dealt almost double the damage that he does today. Even with slightly lower HP and nerfed range, none of that mattered. One throw could wipe out entire pushes, old Lava Hound, clips, say it all. Everything just disappeared. Pair him with Tornado and it was over. Supercell eventually toned him down, his damage was cut, his range and hit radius adjusted, and only then did he become manageable. Bandit. Bandit arrived in 2017 as a legendary built around one thing: her dash. Early Bandit was clunkier, her dash triggered less often and felt inconsistent. Over time though, Supercell tightened the timing, shortened the minimum dash range, and even cleaned up bugs. I hope you enjoyed my stutters. Small stat tweaks came and went, but there's no major rework. A fun fact about her though, she was originally meant to be invisible, dash in, and stun. That idea was too broken, so it got split. Royal Ghost took invisibility, Bandit kept the dash. Night Witch. When she arrived in 2017, she was terrifying, spawning 4 bats on death with faster attacks and longer range. Especially when paired with a tank, she could dominate pushes and wreck defenses. Over time, Supercell slowed her down, reduced her death bats, and tuned her stats. Heal Spell. Heal Spell came into Clash Royale in 2017, and it was capable of healing 3 musketeers from 1 HP back to full. It really was a game changer for big pushes and can completely turn the tide of a match. Unfortunately, Supercell seemed to struggle to balance it. They nerfed the healing multiple times, cut the cost to 1 elixir, but eventually removed it entirely. It was a powerful, fun spell that didn't just fit the meta long term. And today we have the Heal Spirit, which gives a small burst of healing on impact. Useful, yes, but it's nothing like the old Heal Spell, which had that thrilling turn-a-push-around moment. Honestly, it's a big L for fans who loved it. Cannon Cart. Cannon Cart was introduced in 2017 as an epic that rolled onto the battlefield with a shield and became a stationary cannon when the shield broke. From 2017 to 2021, its fast movement speed made it a serious offensive threat, so running out of elixir often meant losing your tower. Back then, its attack speed was slower, around 1.2 to 1.3 seconds compared to today, with its 25% faster, hitting every 0.9 seconds. Cannon Cart had a major rework in May of 2025. The shield was removed and the total health merged into one pool, therefore streamlining the card. Mega Knight, or Mega Knight. When Mega Knight first came out in 2017 as a legendary, he was absolutely terrifying. If you think he's annoying now, just think of how he was when he was released. One spawn could kill almost any ranged troop, like Zappies, and his 2.5 tile radius made him feel like a walking fireball. He could even stop Hog Rider before it touched your tower. He was absolutely one of the most hated cards in the history of Clash Royale. Heck, still might be. Zappies. Zappies didn't exist back in 2017, they were first introduced in December of 2017. They were a rare troop that spawned 3 tiny machines on the battlefield. At first, they were pretty useless because they couldn't hit air units, but that was fixed a month later. Once tuned, Zappies came back as a different card, becoming true stun machines that slow and damage enemies over time. Barbarian Barrel. Back when it first came out in 2017, it had a rolling distance of 7 tiles, meaning it could even hit the King Tower. It also knocked back troops like the Log, though it couldn't push heavy units like the Giant or Prince. On the plus side though, it one-shot cards like Princess and Dark Goblin, basically anything loggable, but at 3 elixir, it was risky and often less effective than you'd hope. Over time, Supercell tuned it, the elixir cost dropped to 2, their roll distance shortened, damage adjusted, and their deployment time refined. Magic Archer. Magic Archer didn't exist in 2017, but when he dropped in 2018, he was insanely frustrating. He could pierce troops and towers in one straight line, already felt pretty strong, but his first attack time was the real problem. Back then, it was just 0.4 seconds. You'd place him, and then the arrow was already flying before your opponent could react. Compared to today's 0.7 seconds, that difference was massive. Free chip damage, no counterplay. Over time, Supercell slowed him down and balanced his timing, but now he rewards skill and positioning, not surprise spam. Royal Recruits. When Royal Recruits arrived in 2018, they were an absolute mess. 6 shielded troops across both lanes was already annoying, but back then they only cost 6 elixir. That 1 elixir made them pretty broken. You could drop them up the bridge, pressure both lanes, and win before your opponent could respond. Supercell bumped the cost up to 7 and reworked their deployment, and over time recruits stopped being brainless and became more controlled. So yeah, you all know I'm joking. Fisherman. Fisherman actually launched at 4 elixir, and that alone held him back. He was hard to fit into decks, and even though his hook was faster, about 1 second compared to 1.3 seconds today, that faster hook made stopping last-second tower hits much easier, and timing him was actually pretty simple. Still at 4 elixir though, he just wasn't worth it. 2 months later, Supercell dropped him down to 3, and only nerfed his damage by 11%. That single change flipped everything. What used to feel clunky suddenly became viable, and Fisherman finally found his place in the meta. Firecracker. She used to have a 2-tile recoil on release that even cards like Bowler couldn't reach her. This instantly made her insanely powerful and annoying. Over the years, Supercell adjusted her attack speed, her knockback and range, and in 2026, she's no longer annoying, so thank God. Goblin Drill. When it was released in 2021, it completely broke the game. There was no delay on the first goblin spawn, so the moment it hit your tower, damage was guaranteed. It also spawned 3 goblins on death, which made it the most no-skill card of 2021. Over time, Supercell added a spawn delay, cut the death goblins in 2, and slowed it down, so W. Golden Knight. Golden Knight arrived in 2021 as a champion, and at launch, he was completely out of control. His dash ability was one of the most broken mechanics ever added. The dash range was 6 tiles, about half a tile longer than today, and it came with bugs that let him dash back and forth, sometimes still reaching the tower in ways that made no sense. He could wipe entire pushes and turn games with almost no counterplay. Over time, Supercell fixed the bugs, reduced the dash range, and tightened how the ability worked. Golden Knight is still versatile, but he's no longer oppressive like he was before, and you actually need timing and setup now instead of just pressing his ability. Archer Queen. She arrived in the arena in 2021, and from day one, she was a problem. Her cloaking capability was insanely strong. Early on, she kept her normal movement speed while cloaked, which made catching her way harder than it should have been. On top of that, her ability cooldown was only 11 seconds compared to the 15 it is today, letting players get massive value on both defense and offense. There was even a weird bug where the log could damage her while cloaked but wouldn't push her back, making the ability feel even more broken. She could shred pushes, she could even survive longer than expected, and swing games with a single button press. Over the years, Supercell fixed the bugs, slowed her while cloaked, and increased the cooldown. Modern-day Archer Queen is still powerful, but she's fair. Mighty Miner. At one point, he had the same movement speed as elite barbarians. Yeah, incredibly fast. Combined with his ramping damage, he could melt tanks if ignored. Then came the weird part. At the end of 2022, Supercell actually buffed him, pushing him straight into overpowered territory. His lane switch ability let him escape, punish mistakes, and flip matches for just 1 elixir. It felt unfair. After several balance changes, he finally settled down. By 2026, Mighty Miner is still strong, but he's no longer free value. You actually have to think before pressing the ability now. Phoenix. Phoenix was one of the cards that's broken upon release. For 4 elixir, you got a flying unit that could revive from its egg, even if it was far from the tower. The revived Phoenix came back with full health and damage, and on top of that, it had a faster attack speed, more health, and higher damage than it does today. Basically, a 4 elixir card that played like a 6 elixir one. It was insane. Supercell had to nerf it multiple times until it was balanced, and now it's just kind of a forgotten card. Monk. Honestly, his ability was what made him terrifying. With pensive protection, he could instantly counter almost any ranged troop, reflecting projectiles and reducing damage while his combo hit hard. The problem wasn't his 4 elixir cost, it was the 1 elixir ability giving free counters. Instead of nerfing the ability, Supercell simply increased the Monk's cost to 5 elixir, and in hindsight, that was kind of a smart move. Over time, Monk got tuned, his ability cooldown increased, his damage reduction slightly lowered, and HP adjusted. Evo Firecracker. She was introduced in 2023 as part of the Card Evolutions update, and oh boy, was she broken. Back then, she had 43% more HP, letting her survive arrows, a bigger recoil, and her spark damage stacked for 3 seconds. Basically, she was, well, unstoppable, so unlocking her without spending money was nearly impossible. Thankfully, Supercell finally balanced her, sparks no longer stack, she dies to arrows, and the HP boost is gone. Today, Evo Firecracker is still strong, but no longer the nightmare she once was. Those early days, though, impossible to forget. Evolved Knight. Evo Knight was an absolute beast when he first came out. He had 30% more HP, a hit speed of 0.9 seconds, 25% faster than today, and 10% more damage. On top of that, he was practically invincible while moving, with 80% damage reduction compared to 60% now. Back then, this 3 elixir card could take down a Sparky on its own and then march straight to demolish a tower. Over time, Supercell tuned him, his bonus HP's gone, the damage and attack speed were reduced, and his moving shield was lowered to 60% from 80. Little Prince. Little Prince is one of the most irritating champions in Clash Royale, and let's be real, we all hate his voice lines. But did you know he was originally supposed to have a much funnier line? One of them was, "Hey ladies," and a few more were cut at the last minute.
"Hey ladies, I had one job. What? Where's my fanfare? Ow! Ah!"
When he first came out in November of 2023, Little Prince was crazy strong. His Royal Rescue ability could call in Guardian and disrupt entire pushes with long dash ranges and heavy pushback. Early on, he dominated because the ability was almost unstoppable, especially if used correctly. In 2024, a wild glitch let players build decks with nothing but Little Princes, one of the biggest glitches in Clash Royale history. Over time, Supercell nerfed his range, damage, and pushback, and by 2026, he's still a strong champion, but no longer overpowered. Evolved Archers. Archers were just as broken and annoying as the Evolved Knight. When they first came out, they had 25% more HP, letting them survive arrows, and a 30% range boost, giving them a 6.5 tile reach, the same as a Dart Goblin. But here's the thing, they dealt 200% damage, doubling their original stats. Imagine having 2 Dart Goblins on steroids that couldn't be countered by log or arrows. People even compared them to magic archers because when they locked onto a princess tower, the damage was insane. Basically, for 3 elixir, you got 2 magic archers in 1 card. Just another day of crazy Clash Royale madness. Over time, Supercell nerfed their HP, range, and damage, and today, evolved archers are still useful, but you need skill and timing, not raw stats, to get value. Evolved Bomber. Evo Bomber was basically a magic archer, similar to Evo Archers. When he first came out, he had 25% more HP, letting him survive arrows and even a hit from a prince. His bomb's bounce extended to 11.5 tiles, meaning it could literally fly across the entire arena and hit everything in its path. And here's the crazy part, his cycle was just 1. So you could drop an Evolved Bomber every 30 seconds. No wonder people called him a win condition. Thankfully, Supercell scrapped the HP buff right before release, making him die to arrows. Now, stats are one thing, but do you actually know the lore behind all these cards? Probably not. That is exactly why you should watch this next video where I break it all down. I'll see you there.